All right. I'll dispense with the intro because this is only going to be used this year, I hope. There's been a huge update on what the test is going to constitute, and I wanted to keep you guys updated so you can adjust your studying habits accordingly. And this goes to my seniors too. Big update. You have to adjust your studying habits. So let me pull this up and I'll read it. All right, so the exam date. So they said they were going to have two exam dates, an earlier one and a later one. They did not do that. It's the same as any year where there's a main test date and a makeup test date, which the only reason you can take a makeup, including this year, is if you had some reason you couldn't make the original date. So they pushed it back a week, basically. So the test date will be Eastern Time, 4 p.m., May 21st. So May 21st at 4 p.m. is going to be the test date. What's good, the exam timing? Students will have 25 minutes to read and respond to question one, and then 5 minutes to upload their response. After uploading the response to question one, students will have 15 minutes to respond to question two, with 5 additional minutes to upload their response to question two. Once their response to question one has been submitted, they cannot go back to it. Kind of like the SAT. When you're done with part one, you can't go back to part one. So just know. So question one is going to be 25 minutes. Question two, 15 minutes. Question one is going to be 55% of the test. Question two, 45% of the test. So it's almost a 50-50 proposition. Question one will be two short free response question. Question two will be the long response question. So if you've been kind of following the ones I've been giving you for practice, it's like the reverse of any given year. The question two is the long response. It's going to be like the story question. Question one is going to be too short. So it basically, it hasn't changed it. It just flipped it and truncated it. It shortened it and flipped it a little bit. So it's a lot of the same stuff we've been getting. However, listen to the end because there's a big deal, and I'll make a note because I know a lot of you guys get. So, question description. Question one draws on the same skills assessed in traditional AP exams, with the exception that students will not be expected to submit graphs on the 2020 exam. Will not be expected to submit graphs on the 2020 exam. That is the biggest change, that they hide it in one little sentence. No graphing, essentially. So both Mr. Gonzalez, pretty much every AP teacher around the country, because of historically what they do, is stressing graphs, graphs, graphs. No graphs this year. The content of the exam is restricted to what is covered in units 1 through 5. I told you that unit 6 will not be assessed. Question two draws on the same skills assessed on traditional AP exams, with the exception that students will not be expected to submit graphs. And they say the same thing. Question one is the equivalent to a combination of the two short questions, and question one is this. Question two, sorry, is the same thing as usually question one on a traditional exam. Other course-specific info. While students will not need to submit graphs on the 2020 exam, we encourage students to have scrap paper available, sketching. As on the traditional exam, questions on the 2020 macro exam are designed such that required calculations can be done with a pencil and paper with no calculator required. However, unlike the traditional exam, you can use a calculator, basically. Use of a simple four-function calculator, either physical or digital. If you have it on your device, you can use a calculator. That's a phone calculator. You can use that. Keep in mind that students are required to show their work. So if you use a calculator, show your work. You can get partial credit. Show your work. And the makeup test is later. The makeup test is 12 p.m. on June 5th, but they're strongly encouraging people not to take the makeup exam. So what does that mean? No graphs means you have to completely change your preparation style. All right. My preparation style is based upon traditionally how this is. So you have to improvise, adapt, and overcome, just like we've all had to improvise, adapt our lifestyles based upon this thing. So what do you have to do? I would focus strongly on preparing for concept-based questions. I would focus on explain. If you go back, I would do again as many multiple choice questions as I can get my hands on, because a lot of those test you on concepts. And when you go into the FRQ and practice the FRQ, don't practice the graphing, practice the explain and the calculation one. If there is something that has you calculate opportunity cost or comparative advantage, practice that. If there's something that has you calculate GDP, there's a couple, you can look them up. How to practice GDP, practice that. Concept wise, is there something that has you guys practice ASAD, but not ASAD graphing, but concepts? What does fiscal policy do to GDP? What does monetary policy do to GDP? Um, what does it do to interest rates? How does the Fed changes? All of this stuff, concept wise, could be on the exam. So I'll put more updates, but just make a mental note when you're studying. Adopt and adjust your studying habits to what's going to be on this year exam. No graphing, more concept, more explain, and more calculation probably, but simple calculation. So go back to, I unlocked everything at this point on AP Classroom. Go back to AP Classroom and adjust accordingly. And I'll be giving other assignments on you guys doing future, maybe unit 3 and 4 in terms of multiple choice questions. So keep studying. I'll issue another update curriculum video.